Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition, and we're specifically going to talk about famous Dungeons & Dragons characters, and how all of the famous Dungeons & Dragons characters are from before 5th Edition. Alright, so let me make my case here, and then I want to talk about why that is. Alright, so let's talk about famous Dungeons & Dragons characters. Well, first of all, there are quite a few that come from the Dungeons & Dragons 1980s cartoon. But, just to be clear, we can't really say that the main characters of the Dungeons & Dragons 1980s Saturday morning cartoon are actually famous Dungeons & Dragons characters, because they're very odd. Right, so let's talk about the six, right? So you got Hank and Eric, you got Sheila and Diana, and you have Bobby and Presto, right? Now, why do they not count as famous Dungeons & Dragons characters? Well, one, I don't think they've ever shown up in any version of the game, in any core rule books. They're not canon in any way. And it kind of makes sense, and the reason why is they're not actually Dungeons & Dragons characters. They're actual Dungeons & Dragons players who were sucked into the Dungeons & Dragons world. And that gets really weird, right? Like, once you introduce that into canon, that gets really strange, right? But there are other characters from the D&D 1980s cartoon that are there. So Warduke, Kellic, Strongheart, Elkhart, I think? Elkhorn. He's a dwarf fighter. And there's a few others, but there are some famous characters from the show, right? Uni is another character from the television show. Then we got Elminster, we have Mordenkainen, we have Tasha, we have and Raceland, right? Raceland is another one. Brunor Battlehammer, all right? These are all recognizable names, right? Minsk and Boo, right? All right, so every single name I just said existed before 5th edition. Who is the most famous 5th edition character? Silence. not a single one, right? Like, I literally cannot name a single famous character who has come out of 5th edition. And that means that in 7 years, the Dungeons & Dragons design team has not created a single memorable character. That's a problem. Like, that is a big problem, right? They're doing their job, making a playable game. I'm not going to take that away from them. They're struggling. They're trying to move forward. They're doing what they can, right? But they struggling. Like it is like there is not a single recognizable character that was introduced in 5th edition. Not one, right? Strahd, there's just so many famous names that they're all come from earlier editions, right? So why is this? This is a great question. Why is this? All right, well, it's the new woke shape of our world, right? So it's all from woke. Woke is the hinge that everything relies on now in Dungeons & Dragons. It's, the woke shape of the future, the woke future, it really reshapes everything, and it reshapes everything in Dungeons & Dragons as well. So let's talk about it, because woke isn't all bad, but there are some sharp edges. All right, so let's get into it. So let's talk about the woke. Why woke is the reason not a single character from 5th edition is memorable, and characters from prior to 5th edition are memorable. So first of all of those characters I mentioned, none of those are from 4th edition either, right? So basically, every single memorable Dungeons & Dragons character is before woke happened, right? So why is that? Well, I think I got it. I'm really thinking carefully about woke and what it means for the game. All right, so the good part of woke is I think woke boils down to, to 2 points, inclusiveness and peacefulness, right? And so once you realize that, inclusiveness and peacefulness is awesome for humanity, right? We all want, I strongly, if I had been born before 1860, first of all, I guess I would have been a Native American, so it would have been hard for me to be an abolitionist. But I really, really wish that I hold in my heart this desire that I would have been an abolitionist, right? And I would have helped, black slaves reach the north and be free, the way Harriet Tubman did, right? that I would hope that in my heart I would have been an abolitionist. Now I can't say I would have, because I don't know. You never know what you're going to do until you're in that situation, and I'll never know that situation, right? But I truly hope so. I'm all for inclusiveness, right? I want there to be an inclusive world where all races are equal, and all races have equal access to power, and all races matter and are. I'm for inclusiveness, right? Also peacefulness, right? I want a peaceful world. I don't want there to be violence toward women. I don't want there to be violence toward anyone, right? And so I want these things to go back, right? But the other thing is, Dungeons and Dragons needs to surge forward because it's entertaining, right? Entertainment is part of why people play Dungeons and Dragons, right? And so I think what's happened is Dungeons and Dragons is attaching wokeness to the product. That is great for humanity because it means that the game is more inclusive and the game is more peaceful. But I think we lie to ourselves if we say that inclusiveness and peacefulness creates a more compelling narrative, because it's literally not, right? Like I can't remember a single famous character from 4th or 5th edition, right? But all of these non-woke, all these characters from non-woke versions that were that were really before the word woke even existed, are all very memorable, right? And so I think this is maybe a little bit of the evangelical Christian problem, right? I love evangelical Christian people, right? And I spend time with them, but they boring as dirt, right? Like they are really, really boring, right? And the reason why is when you ask them a question, they're all going to answer the same answer. They're like, well, what would Jesus do? And my opinion on this comes straight from the Bible. It's the same as the next guy, right? Or the next woman, right? And it's the same thing here, right? When you're inclusive and when you're woke, you're heading in the same direction, right? And you're doing something that is beneficial, but from an entertainment perspective, is boring. It's boring. It's safe. It's the high road. It's expected. And everybody knows the next step, right? Whereas in the unwoke days, from an entertainment perspective, the stories were compelling and engaging because people did terrible, horrible things, right? And that's the issue. Is the best art comes from pain. It comes from suffering. It comes from catastrophe, right? And in this new, more woke, inclusive, peaceful world, it's better for us as humans, but it's boring as all get out, and it's not memorable, right? Now, why am I bringing this up? Well, this is a problem that has been identified. Now we have to figure out how to solve it, right? And we also have to think, is it solvable, right? Is it possible for, here's a perfect example, right? Matrix 4 is coming out, right? And I'm worried. I am not excited for Matrix 4. And the reason why is I loved X-Files, right? And then for 15 years, people were like, we need to bring the X-Files back. And then they brought it back, and it sucked. It was not good, right? And I think the same thing is going to go on with the Matrix, right? The Matrix is going to be created by people who are millionaires, right? Who don't have a care in the world, right? Are those people going to be able to build a compelling story, out of what? Their latte didn't have the right soy milk, right? What is their pain? What is their suffering? What is their angst that's going into the art? There's none, right? So the odds of Matrix 4 being any good are just virtually slim to none, right? They had compelling, awesome stories when they were young and hungry, and when they were fighting against the machine. They are the machine now, right? The directors of Matrix 4, they're so much part of the system, it's not even funny. They're not young, scrappy artists coming up out of the woodwork, right? They are the art system now, right? And it's the same thing. We really need to think, is it going to be possible for woke Dungeons and Dragons to tell compelling stories, right? Because we're putting the bumpers in, right? We're making sure there are no gutter balls, right? And I'm not sure that we're going to be able to get memorable characters out of that, right? I think we have a better game. We have a great playable game. It's a good thing. It's the difference between living, in a condo area and living on, the hard streets of Soho, 50 years ago, right? It's just a different zone, right? I hope there's a solution to move forward for it. But I think but one, if you're going to have a solution, you've got to identify the problem. And I think this is the problem, right? The woke D&D is going to be more inclusive, it's going to be more peaceful, but we have yet to find an avenue to make it more engaging and more compelling, and to make memorable characters the way we make memorable characters in a non-woke world. And it might be just a cost of inclusivity and peacefulness, right? And I think a lot of people will tell you, oh, you can have everything. I'm not convinced of that. I think you can have some of the things, and it's a hard reality, but I think going forward, we can have some things, but we may not be able to have everything. All that's my opinion. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.